This is episode 1109.
Kind of the holy grail for us, I talked about it a little bit before, is this kind of higher rate, right? Or it's a conversion metric effectively, and it's how well are we throughout the funnel converting a visitor to a job done. And really that's how you create value in the marketplace, which you can then extract through creating more demand because more visits turn into more jobs, or creating value by charging pros for the value that you create. So the higher rate is definitely something that, if I had to boil it down to one metric, that would be the one.
Larry Roseman is part of a battle-ready class of CFOs whose first CFO appointments came roughly around 2020, just as COVID-19 was upending the global economy. But for the class of 2020, this wasn't their first crisis. Many like Roseman spent their early career years navigating the fallout of the dot-com collapse and the 2008 downturn. So when the Silicon Valley bank crisis erupted, Roseman didn't flinch. His plane had just landed when the whole thing sort of blew up, Roseman tells us. Holed up in a hotel room, he faced urgent questions about payroll, liquidity, and the future. However, like many of the class of 2020, he was perhaps better prepared than many for the week ahead. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. Our talk with CFO Larry Roseman begins after this.
When it comes to company spend, most finance teams are on defense, reacting to surprise spend, chasing receipts, saying no. But there's a better way. Meet Brex, the AI-powered spend platform that boosts a company's control, earnings, and speed. 99% of customer spend is compliant. 11 million hours saved on expenses and accounting through automation. $681 million plus dollars back to customers in business building rewards. Make every dollar count with Brex.
Hello, we're speaking with Larry Roseman, CFO of Thumbtack. Larry, welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you on board with us. Larry, if you listen to an episode or two, we begin with this question. We point you in the direction of your past and ask you, to identify those experiences you feel that best prepared you for this role. Yeah. What would come to mind for you?
So I have a pretty diverse and broad background, and I think the fact that I've done lots of different things prepared me best for sort of this role as a CFO. I started my career as a CPA and as an auditor at Ernst & Young, and that was a great experience because you're sort of figuring out and learning on the ground how to build financial statements and how the three statements sort of interact with each other. And you're out in the field, you're talking to CFOs as a 21, 22-year-old and, having these interactions with, senior executives, which gives you great insight into sort of how they're thinking about their business. The second, I think, fundamental experience in sort of building this diverse background was my investment banking career. And there you sort of learn in the trenches, one, how to work really hard, and two, about the capital markets, about raising money, about how companies think about financing and value creation and lowering their cost of capital and all that. And then you think about M&A and how M&A is a tool in your sort of tool belt to create value. And then the last kind of experience of the one that I think set me up was being a business unit CFO at big companies. So you kind of have a sandbox to sort of learn how to partner with general managers and think about resource allocation and building teams and, really starting to think about the kind of operating finance part of the business. So I think that kind of three experiences prepare me well, being an auditor, being a banker, and then sort of working at big companies and doing sort of, business unit CFO roles.
Larry, I do want to just mention some of the companies you were part of. I know you mentioned E&Y, but The company you stepped into after your investment banking chapter, of course, was eBay. 6 years there, and you land at first as a corporate development executive. Makes perfect sense, something we've seen over time. But then you get to play these unique CFO roles, emerging market CFO, regional CFOs, and you actually land in corporate FP&A after a while. So really an interesting 6 years for you, I imagine. The other part I want to point out to the listeners, you did something we don't always see. You were an auditor. You were at Ernst & Young, as you mentioned, and you decided you wanted to open an investment banking chapter. And you jump over to investment banking. I don't know. We don't see that all the time. Tell us about it.
Yeah. So I started my kind of accounting career in '95. Did that for about 5 years, and I left Ernst & Young for a hot second to go work in private equity, to be honest. And the job I had taken in private equity, they really wanted an accountant. They weren't looking for a deal guy. And I kind of didn't know that at the time, but that's what sort of opened my eyes to, oh, okay, got to go get the MBA to get on the deal side, to go do the banking thing. So I went back to Ernst & Young. I was a boomerang, actually. And then they helped pay for my business school education at Columbia, and got the MBA. And that was 2001 I graduated. So this was the dot-com boom. And, people were taking jobs in Silicon Valley, and people were taking jobs on Wall Street. And that was kind of the competition. But it was that experience for a hot second doing private, working at a private equity firm that really got me to say I want to be on the deal side, and that's why I went to get the MBA and then joined Bear Stearns. Was at Bear Stearns until the financial crisis. So started during sort of the dot-com boom, lasted at Bear until '08 when the financial crisis hit, but ended up staying with the same team. So I stayed with the same team at Bear Stearns to JP Morgan, and then was one of the early employees at Guggenheim Securities, part of Guggenheim Partners, that launched that investment bank in 2009 or 10.
Yeah, I have to say you are part of a class of, I would say, executives who entered the CFO office whose career sort of bridge the dot-com years and, of course, the financial crisis. So a lot of scar tissue built up, a lot of understanding of how the economic environment doesn't always flow the way we expect.
In hindsight, you never want to be going through one of these sort of crises, whether it's the tech bubble bursting or the financial crisis of '08 or more recently the SVB crisis. But scar tissue helps. And when you've sort of seen the movie once or twice, it prepares you for the next one.
Well, it looks kind of like an exciting role when you join eBay. You're going to help grow this company through possible acquisitions, or what were you first assigned to?
I was doing M&A, so we were buying businesses. We were in some instances selling businesses and investing in businesses. So we did an investment in a company in India. We did an acquisition of a ticketing business in Europe. So yeah, eBay was a great company to work at because from an M&A perspective, they did 4 or 5 transactions on average a year. So it was active from that perspective, and it was a great training ground because the mentality at eBay was we hire great people and then we give them opportunities within the finance org to move around and do different things. And that's what ultimately then, I worked on the spinoff of PayPal when eBay separated. That was the big sort of transformative thing that happened, I think, in 14 or 15. And that then sort of leadership changed, and it created an opportunity for me to move out of corporate development and into more, finance, operating finance, CFO roles.
Yeah, which is, I think that might have been something of a transition, only because in corporate development, you're often surrounded by your banking veterans and people who understand investment banking rather well.
Yep.
These next roles, you're really moving into the operations of the business. Or at least that's the way it looks on paper, but tell me otherwise.
100%. It was a completely foreign experience because to your point, when you're working in corporate development, it is all ex-bankers. And just the mindset and the just the pace, I guess, if you will, of the way things sort of worked and the urgency that people brought to sort of every day was very different than when you inherit a team of 50 people that are, very diverse backgrounds. So it taught me actually, one lesson that I think is important and took years to sort of hone. I could tell you sort of transitioning from a banker to a sort of corporate company and then into sort of an operating role, you definitely have to evolve. And one of the lessons learned was, you got to meet people where they are. Not everybody is going to be I want to work 13 hours, 14 hours a day and sort of, kill it. You have to really figure out what motivates people and how to get the best out of them and meet them kind of where they are. So that's something that was sort of, hard earned, but a good lesson.
Yeah. Interesting. So when you do leave eBay, could you tell us, we always like to know, was it a recruiter or was it your network, or how do you ultimately land there?
It was a recruiter. It was a headhunter.
All right. Well, we probably have a few more career-related questions for you, but right now let's find out about Thumbtack. Tell us about this company. What's it about?
Yeah. So if you're not familiar with Thumbtack, we're a marketplace business. We are the most trusted way for homeowners to hire the right pro for their home repair and home maintenance projects. And we actively work with customers from the beginning of sort of diagnosing their problem all the way to the end to getting it done, to really help them make those decisions along the way with confidence and ultimately to get them what they need done. And what that looks like is matching the customer to the pro and then giving them confidence to hire the right pro. And along the way, knowing that Thumbtack has their back along the way if something goes wrong with the pro or with the project. And then on the pro side, we deliver intentful, committed customers to our pros. So we get them effectively jobs, not just leads. And we try to be the best investment for them to then go and grow their business. So we have 300,000 pros on the network, 4 million customers. We're in every county in the United States, across 500 different categories. And, ultimately we are a technology business focused on innovation. And I think what sets us apart, what sort of is our competitive advantage, is actually not dissimilar to, I think, what sets apart any great marketplace, whether you look at eBay or Amazon or Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, etc. It's the ability to match both sides of the marketplace effectively and efficiently. And for us, that's the homeowner and the pro. And, you're successful if someone comes to you with a need and you find a way through technology to sort of elegantly and efficiently and quickly match them to be successful. And we have a metric that we look at, which is kind of the hire rate. Another way to think about it is sort of the success rate, like how often do you come, put in a request, and then get your project fulfilled by a pro. And to us, that is sort of the holy grail in terms of why we're set apart in kind of the competitive moat against our comps.
I have a kind of a organizational question for you. Just curious about where you deploy your FP&A people, and I'm wondering if it's like the FP&A professional would say, yes, last year I was mostly on the pro side, but this year I'm with the homeowners. Is that a reality or not really?
On the FP&A side, the way that we've organized is I have a corporate FP&A team. And you could think of them as sort of focusing on the senior leadership team, the board, and kind of, external. And then I have a business finance or a business FP&A team, which are like mini kind of CFO partners to the different kind of business leaders.
Right.
So we have one business leader focused on pro. We have another business leader focused on demand generation. We have another business leader focused on sort of the different, product and engineering experiences that we build. So I have a finance partner dedicated to each of those leaders.
5 years. Can you share with us how that model might have been changed? How it evolved since you first stepped into the office?
Like the people model, the organization?
Yeah, I'm curious how, as the model scaled, whether you tweaked it or changed how you deploy your finance team resources.
Yeah. So we've grown a lot in the last 5 years. When I joined Thumbtack, we were the company was, I think, about 250 people. We're now over 1,000. We've 4x revenue since then. We've gone from burning cash to profitable. And my team that I inherited when I joined was 5 people across the whole finance and accounting team. And today it's over 45 people. So, when I joined, it was, first, who are the key critical hires that you need to make? For me, that was a great controller first. And then it was about building, the people, process, and systems to enable the business to mature and scale and grow and, be on a path to 4xing again.
Yep.
And the way I sort of approached it was systematically bolting on teams. So it wasn't immediately, we must have, 8 different or 9 different sub teams within, finance and accounting. So adding a technical accounting team, adding a sort of internal controls and risk team, adding a procurement team. When we first sort of had FP&A, it was one team for everything. And then it became a corporate FP&A team and a business finance team and then a business analytics team. And then we added we call it a strategic finance team, which is kind of corp development and investor relations and that sort of thing. So it was key hires, and then it was systems and process, and then it was systematically building out and adding the sort of key sub-functions to the org.
So help us understand this business. How do you measure, say, Thumbtack's success beyond the top line metrics? What financial or operational indicators matter most to you?
Yeah, so obviously we're a marketplace, so there are these sort of marketplace dynamics across supply and demand. As I think lots of marketplace people do, and certainly investors focus on unit economics. That's a key sort of indicator. As we've sort of grown and scaled, one of the ways I think about that is, the P&L doesn't lie, right? And contribution margin, which is effectively, your revenue minus cost of sales and your variable costs, is a great indicator of, are you sort of spending money and maintaining and growing your sort of operating margin or the contribution margin. We're fortunate. We have 95% gross margins, 50% contribution margins. So that ultimately, again, P&L doesn't lie. It's a great way of sort of demonstrating that. So that's one metric that I focus on, is contribution margin. The other thing I focus on is customer acquisition costs, sort of CAC and LTV to CAC and things like that. And for a marketplace business, it's interesting because for us at least, it takes 2 to tango. It takes 2 to make revenue. And we don't charge a subscription for our pros. We get paid when we connect them to customers. So you really need both sides of the marketplace to come together to make money. And therefore, increasingly, I'm sort of fascinated by or interested in thinking about CAC on a blended basis for both supply and demand, and bringing sales and marketing together in order to create a connection, as opposed to I go out and just acquire a customer, I go out, sales team acquires a pro. So CAC is a metric that sort of is really top of mind for me. And then kind of the holy grail for us, I talked about it a little bit before, is this kind of hire rate, right? Or it's a conversion metric effectively. And it's how well are we throughout the funnel, converting a visitor to a job done. And really that's how you create value in the marketplace, which you can then extract through, creating more demand because more visits turn into more jobs, or creating value by charging pros for the value that you create. So the hire rate is definitely something that, if I had to boil it down to one metric, that would be the one.
When we speak to SaaS CFOs, let's call them, we are frequently talking to them about customer success and go-to-market strategies. Distinguish a marketplace model such as this one, a go-to-market or a customer success organization. Do you have these components? Do they play as an important role, or what's different?
We do. We have customer support. We have customer success. It's more on the sales side, so it's like sales success. We have trust and safety. Our go-to-market motion you could think of as two-pronged, right? You have a sales motion, which is to outbound acquire new pros, but also inbound to make them successful, to make sure they have robust profiles, to make sure they know how to use the platform. So there's that motion. And then on the customer side, there's sort of a go-to-market motion, which is more demand generation. And that spans, the traditional channels of, SEO and SEM and sort of advertising and marketing, but also includes things like partnerships, right? Finding great partners to partner with to meet customers where they are out in the world, that have home service needs. So there is a sort of, I guess, a unique go-to-market motion that's different than selling sort of a SaaS subscription, because it's not, but there is that in our business as well.
Wondering if there's a number or metric that you have during your tenure there helped raise the profile of in order to better educate the organization. And it might be just a metric that you put on the dashboard and it blinks or something. And maybe it's, we often hear about Net Promoter Score or something, but we're wondering if there's maybe a non-financial metric, something that you've begun to measure that you realized, and maybe it was part of the organization. Not everybody needed to know about this. But we're curious if you have identified new ones, or you just have to educate the organization from time to time. Anything?
Yeah, the two metrics I think that, I hope blink every day on the dashboard, are the two that I mentioned earlier, which is contribution, and really getting the organization to think in terms of contribution, because at the end of the day, revenue's great, but if revenue's not turning into contribution and it's not sort of dropping after your variable costs to generate that revenue, especially if you're spending money to at unprofitable basis, that's not what you want, right? So particularly across, sales, across marketing, really having people focus on revenue after these costs, so these contribution dollars, is something that has, I think, really enabled us to focus on profitable growth. So that's one. The other one is the hire rate, because at the end of the day, that ultimately is the North Star metric for the marketplace, because it ties in both customer experience and pro experience, right? Because if customers are getting to jobs done, that's a great experience. We know that's what drives customer NPS. It also drives revenue for us. And then if customers are getting to jobs done, it means we're providing intentful customers to our pros that they want to do more business with us. So it increases sort of pro retention and pro NPS. So it really is sort of this virtuous metric for us.
We want to touch on AI with you, and we've been speaking to finance leaders about their AI strategies. To begin with, it would be interesting to know, how does Thumbtack currently leverage AI to improve what we've been talking about, the customer or the pro experience on the platform?
Yeah. So I am so excited about AI and the impact that I think it could have on our business. And I think this is a kind of watershed moment for us. I believe that AI can do for our business what mobile did for ride sharing and delivery businesses. So the way that we're using it now is all over the product on the end-to-end hiring experience. So just to give you kind of three examples, we're using it at the top of funnel to help customers diagnose their problem. So think of, instead of us forcing you into a search box to have rigid syntax of I'm looking for a plumber or I'm looking for a landscaper, or even a more detailed, syntax on the categories, allowing you with natural language to express your problem, to use voice, to use photos, to use videos, and then to have sort of this interactive experience with the product to help diagnose what you need. And in some instances, it's okay, you could go do that yourself pretty easily. And then the second area where it's super helpful, as I talked, batching is the holy grail, right? And what has made this category so unique is we are dealing with unstructured data. It is not a goods marketplace that has a SKU. It's not a ride sharing that gets you from point A to point B. It's very unique in the sense that there are sort of unlimited amount of SKUs that you effectively need to create to make matches. People need to, on the homeowner side, express their problem, and on the pro side, understand what their preferences are. And AI can do an amazing job at helping us structure a lot of that unstructured data to help make better matches. So that we think has a great potential on conversion. And then lastly, in terms of our ability to intermediate the experience better for our connections, you could think of this as we have tens of millions of interactions over chat and over voice between our pros and our customers. AI and LLMs will allow us to basically take all that data and summarize it and know more about what customers need, what pros' preferences are, allow us to sort of summarize the interactions between pros and customers real time, to nudge the process along when things slow down. So it has lots of applicability up and down the customer experience, just the end-to-end hiring experience. So we're super jazzed about the opportunity. And this will show up in better conversion, which in some instances will show up as demand. It'll show up as better monetization because you're providing more valuable leads or connections to the pros. So it's a watershed moment for us.
Yeah, interestingly, during your tenure here, while it might have been a AI savvy company prior to your arrival, your arrival, and then of course ChatGPT really arrives, and more of us begin to understand the potential that these tools have individually. At the same time, you find yourself acquiring licenses for LLMs across the company. Can you talk a little bit about how generative AI was adopted across the company and where, how you encouraged employees to experiment or not?
Yeah, so we've been using LLMs for a while, and there's lots of instances, like as I described, where we can use it across the whole product, but we're adopting it into our operations as well, right? So for one great example, I think, is in our trust and safety team, they're leveraging AI to basically train LLMs to better predict spam, as one example, or leveraging AI to do better and more automated profile reviews to help with that. So that's one applicable area. I will say though, in terms of like productivity and using it sort of outside of engineering and outside of these sort of frontline teams, so for example on finance, I really think you have to build the foundation first. So I'm not yet at a point where we're saying to teams, okay, we're going to invest in AI and therefore I need you to have X amount of savings to offset that. That will come. I don't think that's a this year thing. I think that's probably more of a next year. So we are outside of sort of the product and frontline teams. We're building that foundation to enable usage. And one of the things I'm doing with my team, which I think which is kind of fun, is a competition. if you will, a finance hackathon to, create incentive and motivation to try. And I don't care if it's failure. I don't care if it's I've tried 10 things and nothing works. Just to sort of reward and recognize people for trying to use AI in their daily work, their daily workflows in finance. So yeah, we're finding it easier on the frontline teams and in the product. And then the next wave is building that foundation and then incentivizing teams to use it through kind of these, recognition or hackathons.
Yeah. So just speaking specifically about finance, how do you see it, reshaping that finance team? What's it going to look like in 3 or 5 years due to the impact of whether it's generative AI or other contributing AI tools?
I think it's going to be automation on steroids. So I think any sort of manual process or reconciliation process or process where you have to take a disparate amount of data and organize it will completely be changed. And I think some of that will be, I think most of that will be tools. So I think even the existing providers of tools that we're using today will likely develop that as part of their capabilities. So I think that will come. I don't know that that's something that will need to be homegrown. So automation has always been the case. I think research and knowledge generation, I think will be a big use case. So think technical accounting memos, think technical accounting research, things like that. I think fraud detection and usages there, I think will be one. I'm very hopeful, and I think it will come, but I not yet sort of seeing it, but just sort of how it will impact our ability to forecast and plan better in terms of FP&A leveraging it to do their jobs more effectively and efficiently. I imagine being able to bring in, and we do this today, right, where you bring in sort of multivariable things to help understand trends to forecast the business, but bringing in all the macro data that we possibly could around inflation, around home sales, around people moving, and using that to sort of build and train models to help forecast the business better. So I think there's going to be a lot for sure over the next 5 years.
Just looking at your roots in Big Five accounting, what would you recommend to young people today if they were still thinking of finance, the finance lane as a career? What do you say all these students who will be joining, as you did, Big Five accounning houses?
Big Five. It was the Big Six, right? When I did it, and it was
Big
the
Four.
That, right? It's now the Big Four, I think, right?
Yeah, correct.
So I think couple things. I think like analytics, data science, business analytics, getting experience in that, I think will increasingly become a competitive advantage or even a necessary experience for finance professionals, which I think wasn't the case when we were coming up. So I think that's an area that I would encourage young people to think about. I still think a career in auditing and or a stint in investment banking is just a great foundation. One just teaches you all about financial statements and how to interpret and understand and kick the tires there, just how they work together. And the other just builds like great, foundational frameworks and tools for thinking about value creation. So two very important things, I think, for folks coming out.
Did anything come to mind when we asked for a finance strategic moment?
Yeah, we touched upon it earlier in terms of like living through some of these dislocation moments, these crises, right? The most recent one was the SVB banking, First Republic banking kind of crisis that occurred a couple of years ago. I was going to Palm Springs for the tennis tournament down there, and like literally getting on the plane and landing, and the whole thing sort of blowing up, being holed up in the hotel room for days. And then, yeah, once banks opened up again on Monday, figuring out how it was going to play out. And then ultimately within a few days after that, we sort of knew how it was going to shake out. We were a customer. We had all of our cash at SVB. And, you know, it's sort of not germane to sort of the outcome, but like, yeah, there was a time there where we thought, you know, we were going to lose all of our cash. And, you know, there was some tense days during that crisis when, you know, looking to sort of move money out of the bank and, ensuring that you can make payroll. And we were, yeah, it was a high stakes, high pressure, situation that ultimately, you know, resolved itself. We ensured that, from a sort of operating perspective, we had the ability to, you know, split up our operating cash so that if there ever was another crisis like this, we had multiple places where we can draw funds. We revisited sort of our covenants and made sure that wasn't going to, you know, put us at risk. We revisited our investment policy to make sure that we were sweeping cash in a way that sort of enabled us to prevent this from happening.
And to think back to your earliest days in this role, the CFO role, again, you had already had several unit CFO roles really at eBay, regional roles. But here you were, you know, it was all landing on your shoulders for the first time. Tell us, what is it that you wish someone had told you as you know, that first 60 days? Here's a piece of advice you wish you heard first 60 days.
Yeah, I think this goes for probably the first 60 days, but also just more general. I don't think it becomes a lot less about your technical skills and your sort of finance acumen, let's just say. I mean, that's obviously table stakes, but you know, you get to a certain point and it's where it needs to be. And it really becomes, to be successful and to have impact and to, really maximize your potential and impact. It's about influencing, and it's about team development, people development. So influencing your peers, your partners, your CEO, your board, etc., your team. And then, you're only as good as the people around you, right? So hiring great people, but then making sure that you're focused on investing in them and motivating them and finding out what motivates them and continuing to create this virtuous kind of learning and development environment. So, yeah, I think thinking that there was this sort of missing skills gap or something that sort of would be exposed is sort of not the worry. It's really about how do you work with people? How do you influence them through EQ and asking the right questions?
So, you've been there 5 years. I imagine your colleagues most know most everything about you, perhaps, but no, there's something they don't know. What would that be? Sued a check?
Yeah, they know I play tennis, so that's my passion. But they may not know that I was a ball boy when I was a kid. That sort of, was still to this day my best job I've ever had. Getting to kind of hang out on the court with my heroes. I that was that was one of the most fun things I've ever done.
They can be nasty to the ball people too.
No, never were nasty. They were nice. In fact, I remember being in like the locker room with Andre Agassi, and he was, hey kid, can you turn up the music? Or had one experience where I was ball boying for Yannick Noah, and we got this bug storm, and he got a bug in his eye, and he's like, "Hey kid, can you help grab the bug out of my eye?" And I'm like, Yannick Noah's eyes.
What about a resource or a book for us before we go? Anything you've read that you thought was valuable, or maybe it's something you escape with.
Yeah. So I really love this book, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. He's this super imposing, Hulk-looking guy, Navy SEAL, who is now like a leadership coach. And this book is just about like, ultimately the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
And you should expect, things to be difficult, and you just gotta persevere on, and you gotta take ownership over the outcome. So that's one of my favorite leadership books, that I often recommend.
No, great selection for us. Thank you. We are up to our final question, where we ask you to look forward finally, and we're interested in the coming 12 months as far as what your CFO priorities are. What would those be?
Yeah, I think ensuring that we can quickly and effectively adopt AI across the business. I want to continue to make sure that I'm prioritizing developing my team. And for the business, ensuring that we are allocating our resources in the best way, that we are investing for growth, but at the same time, we are improving profitability. So those are the things that are top of mind for me in terms of looking forward for the next 12 months.
Larry Roseman, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thanks, Jack. It's great being here.